Hey, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Prickly Pear Podcast. We're so excited to welcome you to our community. My name is Sarah. I'm a stay-at-home mom to 2 under 2, a previous military spouse, and a current law enforcement officer wife. I'm passionate about learning together through prickly seasons of faith. I'm so glad that you joined us today. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. This is Sarah, your host, and I'm welcoming you back for episode 2 in our series on contentment. I am so excited for these next few episodes about relationships and how we can be content in the relationships that we have. More specifically, we're going to be talking about marriage today, and I absolutely cannot wait to share my love story with you guys. That's what we're going to talk about for a little bit of this episode, and this might be a 2-part series or a 3-part series. I feel like, especially early on, and even like the past couple of years, I've just been soaking in as much knowledge as I possibly can. I am definitely and by far not an expert on this topic, and that's why I'm probably talking about it, because these are things that I felt very alone in our marriage. Like, are we crazy? Are we doomed? Are we never gonna work out? I just never heard other people talking about it. Especially when we first got married, I was just like, who did I marry? And is this normal? What did I get myself into? And 5 years looking back, I made the right choice. Definitely, absolutely made the right choice. But it was really hard going from, in our case, a long distance where we didn't even go on dates because we were in different states, to, oh, we're married now and we live together and we're still getting to know each other. So yeah, of course, those first few years were hard. My husband deployed and he was gone for 6 months. I did the math, and of the 5 years that we've been together, I think it was 1.5 years we weren't in, either not in the same country or not on the same time schedule. So, for example, when he was doing patrol for the city, he would be on night shift 6 months of the year for 2 years. So that was a year that we were on completely different schedules. And then he was deployed for 6 months. And so we spent a lot of time apart. And I was very bitter about that for a really long time. And I was listening to a podcast. It's called the Coffee and Cuffs podcast. I highly recommend it if you are married to a first responder, or you are in a significant relationship with someone that is not home very much or very often. They are just very truthful on there, and sometimes it's very hard truth, and it's not really very fun to listen to, but a lot of it is things that I needed to hear, and I wish that I had listened to it 2 years ago when my husband first, even like military spouse time. I really wish I'd listened to it. Anyway, I think they're fairly new, but I found a lot of joy listening to them. Cuffs and Coffee podcast. I definitely have some more ideas of things I want to share about marriage with a military or law enforcement spouse, but I promised you guys our love story, so here it is. Riley and I met in high school. We were both creative type people, and we met in a drama class. He says that he came up to me after a school play, and he got with a mutual friend, and so that mutual friend was talking to me and telling me I did such a good job, and he also told me I did such a great job. I honestly don't remember this. He told me I did a great job, and I just said thanks, and he like remembers this, and it was like a special moment, the moment that we met. Honestly, I don't remember that. I believe that it happened because it makes sense, but I was in a play and I was talking with my friends, and I honestly didn't think anything of it. We became better friends through time. Like, we called each other buddy, and we spelled it a certain way, and when we texted each other, we would use funny emojis, and we had secret languages type things that were like special to us, and we had a lot of fun together. I took a story to state. It was like with a debate club kind of thing, and there's a drama side of that. And so went to state with the storytelling, and I just remember I was nervous and practicing constantly, and I had gone through the story. He listened to it probably like 200 times, and he never complained, and I kept asking for feedback, or what do you think of this, or what do you think of that, and he'd come up with ideas with me. And he was so patient. Like, looking back, I don't know why I didn't realize that he liked me. I maybe thought he did, but I didn't take it too seriously. Um, and there was just this like sweet moment where he had just helped me and we were exhausted from practicing. Well, I was exhausted from practicing so long. And we both like just laid down on the floor and he like looked at me and I just remember that look of like, oh, I think that he might love me. I remember thinking that in my mind, and then I was like, no, that's not gonna happen, and I'm moving on, and whatever. And even in high school, he told me he wanted to be a police officer, and I remember thinking, okay, well, that's not gonna work. Like, I'm not gonna be a police officer, and so I kind of just tuned that whole thing out. I, yeah, I honestly thought we were a lot alike and maybe we weren't different enough. He was 2 years younger than me, and so we were in different grades, and his best friend was dating and then married my sister, and so I just kind of thought of like my little sister's friends kind of thing. I don't know. I just didn't take it too seriously. And we talked off and on throughout college. Like my husband remembers when he would call or I would call him and we'd talk like late into the night and we just share our hearts with each other. And so regardless, he sent me a message after college in 2019 and it was like, hey, are we going to try this or not? And I was like, why not? And it's not like we hadn't tried before. That's the thing. Like he had taken me on a date and he wanted to see Minions together because he thought it would just be fun to laugh together. And I had already seen Minions. I had just seen it with my sister. And so I was like, let's go see Ant-Man. Well, he had already seen Ant-Man. And I was just so nervous the whole time that he was going to like try to hold my hand. And I didn't really want to be on a date. I made it very clear that it was a friend date. And he wanted it to be like, as soon as the movie was over, I basically just like ran away and I purposely showed up almost late to the movie. Knowing him now, it's kind of funny because he hates being late to movies. Hates being late to movies. And I guess it didn't bother him at that time. Like he got through it. He dealt with it. So that's what my husband would count as our first date. What I would count as our first date is when we were in California. I'm working with Chick-fil-A. I'm helping open a store. I'm doing marketing for this location. And I'm only 4 hours away from where he's stationed. And so he was at a Marine base. And it was a 4-hour drive to go see me, which is way shorter than the drive to Texas. It was like 22, 24 hours. So I'm only 4 hours away. This is the chance. He drives the 4 hours. Takes me on a date. He has flowers. It's sweet. We go to Applebee's. And apparently, like, it was almost a deal breaker to him that I double dipped in the salsa. And I didn't think it was weird to double dip when you're like with someone you're really close to. But apparently he didn't think we were that close yet. I guess. Because he's like, it's so rude that you double dipped on the salsa. I don't know. I was nervous. I'll be honest. I was super, super nervous. I didn't eat very much, which is crazy because those Applebee's chicken strips with the mac and cheese are incredibly good. And we honestly, throughout this whole time, it just wasn't the right time for us to be together. Like looking back, there was a moment where I was driving past College of the Ozarks and I was in the area, just so happened to be in the area where he was going to school. And I like actually I think I called him and I was like, hey, I'm right by your school, do you want to hang out? And this was like way out of my comfort zone. And I was very lonely and just it was like he's always there for me and I need somebody and I'm in the area. Anyway, he was really rushed and he was working with some event and he was extremely busy. He still answered the phone and made sure I was okay, but he was basically like, no, like I'm really busy and I'm not able to hang out with you. And I remember being like super heartbroken because he had never told me no before or said like he was too busy for me. And it was a big event. Like it was part of his grade or his job. I mean, it was something that he had already committed to. And I just remember being like, man, I really blew it. Like, this is like a good guy, and I've blown it and not really been there for him or haven't been nice to him or whatever. And so it was kind of all great. Like, once we went on that first date at Applebee's, he drove those 4 hours, and then he drove 4 hours back to the base so that he would be back in the morning, and he had to do some run and this like weekend thing with his group, and it was exhausting, and he had been up basically all night. He had driven 8 hours, there, and 4 hours there and 4 hours back. And from there, we kind of just like talked and hung out, and we got married really fast. We got together in like September. He proposed in February, and we were married in June. So it went by really quickly. And then I moved from Texas to Arizona, and I was just in this state without my friends or my family and starting over with Chick-fil-A again. And it was hard starting over for sure. So if I were to go back and talk to first married Sarah, I would definitely tell her not to be afraid of conflict and not be afraid to have some sort of confrontation. And that can be done in love, and that can be a really great thing. Not to be afraid to like voice your needs and your wants. I really struggled with that, like communicating what I needed. I still struggle with it, but I can definitely tell it's been so much better, especially the last year for sure, of speaking, hey, this is something that I really need, or this is something that I'd really want. So my first point, as we're talking about marriage and things that I wish I had known 5 years ago, is to create clear expectations about your feelings. And this is something that I've gotten from Dr. John Deloney. We went to their marriage and money marriage retreat last year in October with Dave Ramsey, and it's in Nashville or Franklin, Tennessee. And oh my goodness, it was so good. So I highly recommend it. But one of the biggest things I got from that conference, and I don't think it'll ever really leave me because I use it as often as I can practically in our marriage, is that we speak in words and we think in pictures. So for example, Sunday mornings, I had this picture that even with 2 kids, and this is very idealistic, but I thought that Sunday mornings would feel, and this is key, how you think it'll feel or how you want it to feel. I thought they'd feel peaceful. I'd listen to my worship music. I'd drink my coffee while I did my hair and makeup. I'd get to sit down while I did my hair and makeup. Usually throughout the week, I'm like running to the bathroom in between whatever I'm doing with the kids, and I'll feel put together, and I'll have on jewelry, which I don't usually get to wear, and I don't know, I'll just be proud of my appearance and get to wear clothes I don't usually get to wear. Those things just bring me joy, and it'll just be so peaceful and fun, and we'll be together as a family. And of course, it was very difficult, especially postpartum, not fitting in the clothes that I wanted to wear, or not being able to pump in the clothes that I wanted to wear, and then having to pack a bunch of extra stuff. There's just all these extra steps. But as time progresses and as the baby grows, and there's a lot less fussy behavior, a lot less feeding, a lot less waking up throughout the night, that all has gotten better. But that picture has still been the same. That's still the picture of what I have and how I want it to feel. And so finally, I mustered up the courage, because I hate conflict, and this isn't even conflict. Just speaking my needs out loud and communicating those has always been pretty difficult for me. So I said, hey Riley, I have this picture of this Sunday morning. And he's like, oh, okay, well, we can do that. I'd like to drink my coffee too. Okay, well, how can we make this happen? And so of course it's not perfect. We have 2 under 2. That is not going to change, and some Sundays look better or worse than other Sundays. I dropped the ball this Sunday. I slept in. I was very well rested, so that picture was good. And of course, we have to be content when it's not this perfect picture of what we thought. But if you don't communicate how you want those moments to feel with your spouse, they won't know. And it's like expecting them to read your mind. And Riley would never know that I had felt that way. And so we made this little compromise where he takes care of Luke on Sunday mornings, like everything. Breakfast, getting him dressed, doing his hair, waking him up. I mean, anything Luke related, my husband takes care of. And then all I have to worry about is myself and the baby. And it has gone so much more smoothly. I'm less stressed. I'm less bitter that I'm taking care of both kids and myself. And he's happier because he can drink his coffee while Luke eats breakfast, and we have a schedule. And so part of that is just figuring things out together as your children grow and as you add to your family. But another part of that is definitely describing that picture. And so if we go into any sort of what I expect to be stressful situation, holidays are one of those for us. I always have some picture and there tends to be some fight, but the last few holidays that we've done this exercise have gone so much better to say, okay, this is how I want it to feel. Because honestly, both of us want the other person to be happy and to enjoy the holiday. Like, we don't want to be stressed and for there to be conflict. And most of our arguments are because I didn't communicate what I was looking for, what I wanted to happen. I just expected him to read my mind. Like, of course he wants to have a dance party in the car on the way. I don't know how he would know that unless I said, hey, I want the trip to Grandma and Grandpa's house for Christmas to feel fun. I want it to be loud with singing and music and snacks, and I want to look at the lights on the way, and I want the kids to be surprised. That's a much different scenario if he was thinking, I want the road on the way there to be peaceful and quiet. And sometimes we do want completely opposite things. That is totally true. That sometimes we absolutely have to compromise and say, hey, on the way there, we're going to have so much fun, and it's going to be loud, and it's going to be silly, and there's going to be laughter, and we're going to both feel connected. And on the way home, we're going to decompress after being with people, and we are going to relax, and it's going to feel restful, and the kids are going to sleep. So it's so important to just communicate how you want it to feel and how you even want your home to feel as you're building your family. And I was so surprised because we both kind of expect 2 under 2 to feel chaotic, but I crave peace so much. Like, as soon as the kids go to bed. But again, that's something you can communicate with your husband, and as you guys build this relationship and build your family and how you want it to feel, every family is so different. And so I really encourage you, if you haven't had that words and pictures conversation, you absolutely should check out Dr. John Deloney. He has a podcast called The Dr. John Deloney Show, and he's with the Dave Ramsey Network. Anyway, give it a listen. It's about all types of relationships. It's not a marriage podcast. But I definitely wanted to give him credit for that exercise because it has helped us so much. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to our series on contentment. There'll be more coming up soon, so I hope you'll give a listen to part 2 as we continue our discussion on marriage. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed the show, check out more resources on TikTok and Instagram at the Prickly Pear Podcast. I'd love for you to become involved in our community, hear your questions, and get to know you a little bit better.